Well, it will be first a year of hope because we will have a potentially a huge economic growth, potentially vaccine, but there will be also new values that will appear. In my view, is the values of altruism, the importance of new sectors in economy, which are health, education, that will be the key for the years to come, which I call economy of life as a global view of the sectors to be developed and using digitals.
My slogan is techno acceleration. In other words, of course, technical change, we've had that for a long time, but it has jumped ahead because of all the things we know, including how we're conferencing today. So in this techno acceleration, there's going to be some further disequilibrium generated.
China will try to become the leader of the world, but in my view, will not succeed. And it will be a moment of truth for Europe to consolidate or to disappear as a potential partner for the world stability in the future.
And geopolitically, of course, China. The fact that China gained 1 year in the race because it was able to control the virus by using the methods that a totalitarian government has. This has brought the China threat made it much more obvious, much more prominent, that if Japan allows Australia to be humiliated, to be isolated, Japan's turn will be next. If Japan does not have a way to help Taiwan in the case of an invasion, if that is impossible for constitutional reasons, historical reasons, political reasons, then what would happen might be that the Chinese take Taiwan. But if the Chinese take Taiwan, Japan would suffer a catastrophic security loss.
But I think that with Mr. Biden on board, we'll have more attempt to have a multilateralism, the beginning of a large wave of protectionism that could be a disaster because protectionism leads to nationalism and nationalism leads to war. That's a real risk. There are many things that Japan should do, but in terms of geopolitics, I would say two things. One, Japan should be prepared to be alone and should be prepared not to rely in the next 30 years on the American support, because American support will not be here forever. And it is clear that the San Francisco Treaty will not be here. It's the same for Europe. We have to be aware that we are not going to be supported by the Americans if we have a real problem. And second, you have to find a way to do with the Chinese what we French have done with the Germans, which means to find an agreement and to help them move towards democracy.
アメリカが常に日本を助けてくれるわけではない。EU も今、マクロン大統領、フランスの下で、ストラテジックオートミー、戦略的自立ということは強調されていますが、おそらく日本も同じように戦略的な自立というものが今までよりも必要になってくると思います。ですから、日本はすでにもう米中対立の時代、そしてトランプ政権の時代に、アメリカ、中国との関係を悪化させないようにしながら、ある程度、独自のイニシアチブを取ってきたということですので、孤独に耐えなければいけないというのは、実はもう安倍政権の時からその認識は私はあったんだと思います。そう考えると、私は中国という異なる体制の国と、つまりは歴史認識の問題を政治的に利用している中国と、フランス、ドイツの関係のような形での親密な関係を作ることは、簡単ではない。 不可能ではないけれども、簡単ではないと思っています。ですから、先ほど申し上げた通り、日本が協力するパートナーは、孤独の中でパートナー、EU やオーストラリアやニュージーランドやカナダやインドのような民主主義諸国です。
Well, democracies are always appearing, they always seem weak, they always look weak, but historically they win. And they win because they correct their mistakes. That relationship of equality with China is not available. You can be friend with China, you can be enemy of China, but you cannot be equal to China. The language of equality does not exist in Chinese diplomacy. Today, we understand and we know how to control globalization. What we cannot know and we cannot understand is how to control the technological change.
The Chinese management of the COVID-19 was a nightmare, a huge failure. And it was a huge failure because of dictatorship. And one of the first impact of a dictatorship is that within the country, people lies to each other. The success story of the management of the pandemics is a democracy, not a dictatorship. What I think is important is economy of life, which means the most important sector, which should be where we focus, which is energy, clean energy, hygiene, education, health, food, agriculture. I think we should remember the lessons of COVID, which is to take care of long term, to remember the threats, and to take care of threats of long term. We knew the pandemics. I wrote about the pandemics 20 years ago, and other people wrote about the potential threat of pandemics 20 years ago, 10 years ago. We didn't prepare to that in many countries. Japan more than Europe and more than the US, but we are not prepared. And I hope that one of the lessons is make a list as soon as we can of the main threats of the next 20 years. Would be to focus all investments on the economy of life sectors in order to be prepared to these new threats. And we will realize that it's a wonderful world.
この10年間、それぞれの国がそれぞれの問題を解決し、また連携を強めていけば、やはり先ほど私が冒頭で申し上げた短い21世紀においても、どうにか、パクスアメリカーナではないけれども、やはり民主主義が世界の中心的な流れであり続けるんだろう